It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. Great panel for you. Jason Snell, Ben Thompson, and Stephen Kovack. We're going to talk about the Apple Watch. We're going to talk about the Apple Watch, and I think there'll be some Apple Watch coverage in there as well. Twit is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. This is Twit This Week in Tech, episode 505, recorded April 12th, 2015. My thumb got sweaty. This Week in Tech is brought to you by Citrix GoToMeeting, the powerfully simple way to meet with coworkers and clients from the convenience of your computer, smartphone, or tablet. Share the same screen and see each other face-to-face with HD video conferencing. For a 30-day free trial, visit GoToMeeting.com today. And by Stamps.com. Use Stamps.com to buy and print real U.S. postage the instant you need it, right from your desk. To get our special offer, go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone, and enter TWIT. That's Stamps.com, offer code TWIT. And by Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest way to create a beautiful website, blog, or online store for you and your ideas. Go to squarespace.com and enter the offer code TWIT at checkout to get 10% off. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show that we do every week to cover the latest tech news, and we bring in the best journalists, my good friends, and people we enjoy talking to talk about the week's tech news. There's a lot to talk about. So glad Jason Snell could be here this Sunday.
I'm here in person.
Yay.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. You don't have an Apple Watch, but you have a MacBook.
I do have a MacBook, space gray.
Good enough. I'll take it.
Fancy.
We'll talk about that in just a second. Also here from Taiwan and Stratechery, Ben Thompson. Good to have you.
Good to be here.
Very early in the morning, 6 a.m. Thank you for putting on a shirt for us.
I realize it's doing some what's the word, the moire.
Yeah, that's okay. And you know we can read your super secret notes on your whiteboard behind you.
No, it's okay. I already wrote that article. So
Ben is an amazing analyst, and I love having you on. And if you are not yet subscribing to his newsletter, Stratechery, you must. You must. Also with us from Business Insider, the great Steve Kovack. We got a great panel here. Hey, guys.
Yeah, hi.
Welcome.
An international panel.
International. In honor of Apple Watch Day, maybe better, in honor of Game of Thrones Day.
I like that better.
There we go.
I was thinking, this is a terrible night because Game of Thrones, Silicon Valley and Veep premiere on HBO. But there's Mad Men Episode 2 on AMC and The Good Wife. They wouldn't.
And Daredevil on Netflix.
And Daredevil is on Netflix.
Yep. I have one of those TiVos with the 6 tuners.
Well, that's the thing. I think they would, in years gone by, they would have never done this. They would have carefully programmed this, and you only go head-to-head if you really want to sock rough. But everybody watches on demand now. Nobody cares. It'll be interesting to watch tonight because this is the first big night for HBO Now.
Oh, man.
This is the over-the-top app HBO ships only on Apple right now, although in 3 months the exclusive will be over. But right now on iTunes, not iTunes.
You can the iOS app and on Apple TV you can get it. Although it's funny, I've heard some people say that it's not actually true that it's the exclusive. It's the exclusive for HBO Now, but but Sling lets you get HBO. So it's sort of over the top, but it's like regular HBO because Sling is considered a TV provider, right?
Whereas it's not on demand.
Exactly, but HBO Now through the Apple devices is sort of in a different thing. But it's going to be interesting to see if the internet grinds to a halt at 9 p.m. Eastern when Game of Thrones comes on.
It did last year, remember?
Oh, HBO Go did not make it.
Yeah. And HBO dismantled that multi-million-dollar project they had up in Seattle. They'd hired a bunch of Amazon engineers.
Yeah, and their CTO basically exited the company, and they're using Major League Baseball Advanced Media for the streaming of HBO Now, which is funny. If you're not a baseball fan, you might think, well, that's totally random. Why are they using that? But it turns out Major League Baseball Advanced Media is maybe the best. It's certainly one of the best video distribution mechanisms. CBS uses it for all of its sports broadcasts. I believe ESPN is still using it for all of its streaming. They have been using they've had other clients for a long time. It's not just a baseball streaming service, and they've got this huge infrastructure. I've been in their building in New York City that has this just huge streaming infrastructure that they've built.
Do they have their own CDN, or do they use Akamai or something?
That I don't know. I mean, their own infrastructure is gigantic, and then they probably have CDN partners too, but I don't know that offhand. But it's an amazing company, actually. And so it's funny that HBO has drawn a little more attention to it, because this is one of the great benefits baseball had of having the foresight to embrace digital technology earlier than most other sports leagues did, and they invested in the tech, and now you've got big media companies like Time Warner with HBO Now coming to them and saying, please help us. So we'll see how they hold up.
It is a surprise, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny how that is, but baseball, the rural pastoral game
turns out to be pretty high tech.
They did some really smart things with their tech.
Well, Sling TV had trouble with March Madness, the NCAA tournament. Apparently, people who use Sling TV to watch ESPN had buffering and stuttering, and it wasn't a good experience.
We saw that in the World Cup. I don't know. It's interest here is outpacing the ability of these streaming services, I think, to really catch up. We've seen that Apple did some live streams of their events early, and then they stopped for a while.
Yeah,
and I think the reason
the
was that they couldn't manage it, and then when they came back, they struggled to get it back.
Chinese translation in the background.
Streaming video is hard. If a lot of people, if there's demand, it can be really hard.
Yeah. Well, it's a very different model than the broadcast model. It doesn't matter if you've got a transmitter and an antenna. If one person watches or a million, it's the same bandwidth from your point of view.
Right.
But it's completely upside down for streaming. Now, cable kind of is a little bit like streaming. I mean, but it's so distributed that I think the cable companies don't have to worry so much about this. HBO decided to launch Game of Thrones in 170 countries this year. It was the most pirated TV show of last year, hoping that if they
pirated this year,
and guess what?
Yeah, already started.
Can you watch it in Taiwan? Is it on somewhere in Taiwan, Ben?
I'm not sure. I'm people ask me how I get a lot of stuff done, and one reason is I don't watch very much TV.
Oh, yeah. So that's why I get very little done myself.
Me too.
I prefer to watch TV to actually doing anything. But I presume it's going to be all 170 countries. It doesn't leave many out. But already, the first 4 episodes have been leaked to the BitTorrents. You can get them on Pirate Bay, not HDSD. The thinking is it's the review copies that were sent out.
The DVDs, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a TV critic, and I know that they got the 4 episodes. And
right.
I actually saw the screeners of the first year before it came on, and these seem to be a little more recent than the ones I saw in year 1, where there were missing effects. It looks like maybe the effects are all there, but it's a standard def. Right. It's an inferior, experience. But if people really want to see those, 4 episodes early, I guess they're going to go ahead and do it. I'd rather watch it in HD with everything locked down and final.
So have you watched Daredevil, the TV series on Netflix, Steve, or you just brought it up to be?
Yeah, I've watched the first 3 episodes.
People are raving about it.
It's really good.
Yeah.
The second episode especially, I was just
So
blown
good.
away. We put this story up on the site today. There's this one fight scene that they do in all one shot, and it's just absolutely brilliant. They did a really, really good job, and it ties into the other Marvel movies and TV shows, and it's really good. If you have time to watch it, you definitely should. It's a must watch.
I agree.
Even if you don't like Marvel.
It's not like any of the other Marvel stuff. It's a TVMA. It's grittier. It's darker. It's more violent, like realistic violence instead of sort of cartoonish violence. And what I like about it is the ramifications of the violence are not ignored. Like if a guy gets in a fight, he's hurt afterward and in pain. And I like that there's a violence has consequences, and that's one of the things that happens in Daredevil.
Now I have another show to watch.
Yeah, put it on the stack.
I'm really not going to get anything
It's another
done.
thing for Ben not to watch.
You won't be disappointed.
Honestly, it's I always days like today where like premiering Game of Thrones, like I always have like a wince of regret, like it'd be cool if I was up to or whatever, like the big things happen. But no, the only one the one that I have kind of kept up on is Mad Men, so I have that to look forward to.
It's kind of even more incomprehensible this year. This season, I can't figure out what the hell's going on. But I do like the style. I like the era. I like the period. So Daredevil, when did it come out? Because that's all.
Friday. It was
Friday.
The same minute that the Apple Watch went on sale.
And
Daredevil
the
streamed.
digital editions for the first time ever of Star Wars.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They really don't
What's
want
the
us to
new
get
fanfare?
anything done, do they?
Nope. They want your money.
Who are they? These people. Wow. All right. Let's talk.
It's the Watch Marvel Axis
Yes.
complex.
Yes. The axis of
Yeah.
evil.
Apple Marvel complex.
So now I have to watch Daredevil. Yeah, I saw a lot of Twitter chatter about it. People saying it's darker than The Dark Knight. It's really good. And I thought, well, I don't know what they're talking about. Twitter's great for the keeping up, though, on what the in crowd is talking about. You know there's something going on. All right, I've been putting off talking about the watch. Let's talk about the watch. Friday, 12:01 Pacific time. I feel so bad for anybody who's not in California. 3 a.m. if you're on the East Coast. Apple opened the store. 10 minutes later, sold out. Pretty close to sold out, right?
Yeah.
So I bet you, Ben, you must be following this a little bit. Is this lack of supply, unexpected demand, inability to produce them rapidly enough? What's going on? We don't know, of course, but do you have a thought?
You just said my thought. We have no idea. I mean, obviously, it's some combination of limited supply and excess demand, but that's like saying 2 + 2 is 4.
Right.
So it's. I mean, it's hard to say. I think it's clearly. I mean, this is as you would expect, I guess, from any new product from Apple. It's very much in high demand. It's sold out everywhere, not just in the U.S., also in China. They launched in China the first week. Something to keep in mind is they did that for the first time with the. This is really the first time, actually, because they planned to do it with the iPhone 6, but it was delayed in China. So, no, I mean, I'm sure Apple would prefer everyone to think that it's massive demand, but I mean, we don't know. It'll be interesting to see if Apple does a press release on Monday saying how many they sold.
Is there a precedent for that? What they do?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, they often do. And if they do, I'm sure that the interpretation would be that it's excess demand.
Even the most expensive, the $17,000 gold edition, sold out till June.
Well, I think there's a question of whether they were.
It said August at first. When I first signed in, it said August, and then they've downgraded it to June. Do you think they hadn't made any except for Katy Perry and Pharrell?
They had said that they were going to be later to ship the editions.
So maybe they can't crank these out. This is the one I would buy if I had $17,000. But who has 17? So obviously somebody has 17,000. So everything across the board, as you look, the Sport, the Edition, the stainless steel, almost all of them are now June. Whatever June means. I don't know if that's June 1st, June 30th.
Well, I ordered mine 15 minutes into the order period and got
What did you get?
mid-May. I got
Mid-May.
the Space Gray Sport edition, which seems to be the nerd watch of choice.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I didn't even know that I was a stereotype. Turns out, yep, I'm a stereotype. And mid-May is what I got.
I was I overslept, and I woke up at 12:09. The Apple fanatic inside me, my eyes went whoa, and I ran to the computer, which I had pre-configured. I had it all set up. I had the App Store, the Apple Store running in the app on an iPad, on an iPhone, and on my computer I had it. And I had already favorited the two that we want to get because I'm going to get one for Lisa and one for me. And I was very fortunate because Lisa wanted a 38-millimeter steel. I want the 42. The 42 back ordered as well to May. But I got April 24th on the April 24th to May 7th. I don't understand what that means.
Something that was really interesting was that it went on the App Store or on the apps. It was available at midnight. It didn't go up on the web until 12:08.
That happened with the iPhone as well.
It did, and I was very mildly stressed out because, well, one, it's not shipping in Taiwan to start, so I have to ship it to the U.S. first and then get it shipped over. But two, I was on the web 'cause it's 3 PM for me, so I'm at my desk anyway. I'd pull up my phone and do it. I'm curious if that was intentional to drive people to use the app more. One that's interesting is you could pay with Apple Pay. And I wonder if for a lot of people that is the first time using Apple Pay outside of the App Store. And it was the first time for me. And to be frank, it was pretty amazing. Like you could have ordered the watch you wanted in like less than 15 seconds. So I'm curious if that was intentional or just was an accident or what. But I mean, for me anyway, it was effective in getting me to actually use Apple Pay to pay for a physical object, and it was a very impressive demo.
This is not the first time. This has happened a bunch of times now, and it seems to me that there's something in Apple's infrastructure where the store backend goes up and the app is directly hooked into that backend, but the web front end goes up later. And this has happened 3 or 4 times at least, to the point where it's like the open secret now that if you really want to buy an Apple product, the moment it goes on sale, use the Apple Store app on iOS.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense if you think about, if it's all API based, but the front end has to propagate. No, it makes sense from a technical perspective that'd be the case. But unfortunately, the open secret was forgotten by me. But I still have the 24th ship date. But
you did.
It was funny. I was very stressed out. And also, for some reason, the App Store has my wrong address, and I can't get it to update. So every time I order, I have to change the address. So I was changing the address, and I was like,
you get a little fumble thing of like, hurry. It's like James Bond. The bomb is ticking down.
Apple Pay didn't work for me because I think my thumb got sweaty. So my password.
I see a movie here.
Well, it's like yeah.
So if I had to guess, there was kind of an open question whether the Apple Watch as a luxury and as a new category would sell as well as an iPhone, and it's in the initial blush. I think a lot of people counseled, wait to the next generation, or don't rush. I would guess that the demand outpaced Apple's expectations. The rumor, of course, to the Wall Street Journal published was that they made 5 or 5.5 million. I would obviously they're going to go back and make as many as they can as fast as they can. We don't know. Maybe they made 1, maybe 2. I don't know. But my guess is they sold 5 million in the first minute or 2. I mean,
well, I think just like Jason probably put a much wiser technical explanation to my surmising about backroom thinking. It's probably the same thing here. I mean, the reality is ramping is very difficult, and ramping a brand new product is even more difficult.
Nobody knows how to do this better than Apple. They've got decades now of experience.
Sure, but I mean, it doesn't change. Like it's like a physics problem. Like you can't the speed of light is a constraint. Like gravity is a constraint. Like no, it's like that when it comes to manufacturing. Like there is just fundamental constraints when it comes to making and ramping a new product. And we've never had a company of the scale of Apple, with the demand that Apple generates, launch a new product ever. I mean, because you have to remember the iPhone, like Apple wasn't at all the company that it is now. Even the iPad. And whereas today, just the demand for anything they sell is so overwhelming that I'm sure that no matter if they had estimated there'd be 100 million sold, I bet they would still be sold out just for the very kind of the constraints that come with building a brand new product.
I think strategically, if you're Apple, you want to release the product at a point where you can ship a decent number of them, but you don't want to wait to the point where you can fulfill all demand anyway. Okay. You want to have some backlog, I think, because otherwise you've waited too long. I would say you kind of want to.
On the other hand, if somebody's waving money at you, you want to take it.
They took it, and then they'll give you your watch later.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Well, the issue is that to meet demand in because the demand's always highest in the first quarter. That's something that's sold typically. Maybe it'll be the case with with a new product. But say an iPhone, for example, if you want to meet that demand in the first quarter, it's extremely inefficient and a very poor use of your capital, because the problem is all that capacity is then going to be severely underused the rest of the year.
Right.
So it's a very difficult balancing act. I suspect actually that with the iPhone anyway, if you'll notice the date of the physical leak of the phone, what the phone looks like from a physical perspective, which almost certainly is coming from the supply chain, it's actually getting earlier and earlier every year. So this year, the first leak of the iPhone 6 was in February. The first leak of the 5S was in March.
Because they're starting earlier and earlier, right?
I think that's what's happening, is they're actually ramping earlier and earlier because they want to have they don't. If you build enough capacity to satisfy first quarter demand, like I said, you're wasting money. So I think they're trying to start earlier and earlier so they can have stuff pent up. And they sold 75 million in the first quarter last year, which is insane. Yet they still didn't meet demand. So I mean, it's a good problem to have in some respects, but it's a problem that no one in any industry really has ever had to face.
Steve, you're getting yours tomorrow?
No, next week.
Next week.
But I think, and it's going to be a review unit from Apple. I'd even try to order it because, well, first of all, I'm not sure I want to own one in the first place.
Right.
But second of all, I think like if they really did make 5 million of that initial shipment, we're going to hear about it on Monday because they don't really have a precedent for like bragging about these kind of things. There's kind of a reason why they haven't been saying those opening weekend iPad numbers. I think in the last 2 years, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, one of you guys, but it's because those sales are kind of going down, whereas iPhone sales, each opening weekend's bigger than the previous year. If they can sell 5 million, wow, that's more than any of other smartwatch maker has made ever, right? Pebble has only sold about 1 million, I think. Samsung,
700,000 Android Wears in the first 6 or 7
that's
months.
nothing. That's peanuts. And if they can do 5 million in one weekend, that's insane. And they've already proven they have a market for this thing. But moving forward, we're not going to really know. They've already said they're going to lump these reports in with that other category with Apple TV and a bunch of other junk. So, we'll get a sense from third parties and stuff how well this thing is doing. But it'll be really interesting to see if they have that press release tomorrow talking about opening weekend sales and pre-orders.
It's a triumph of marketing, though, isn't it, Stephen? I mean, I think this. Look how poorly everything else is done in this category. Nobody needs one. It's a luxury item, and yet the triumph of Apple's marketing is it doesn't matter. They're going to sell out no matter what.
Yeah, if you look feature for feature, what this watch can do versus Android Wear, I mean, the features are very similar. You can talk into it, you get notifications, it buzzes you. It looks a lot better than the Android watches, and it has that status symbol. It's more expensive, it feels premium. But as far as feature for feature, what it can do, there's not that use case. Like Android Wear hasn't proven the use case, and this, it's too early to judge, but, this hasn't proven it either. Maybe once... because it's Apple and it's a triumph of marketing, like you said, people will find that use case. But right now, even Apple's been kind of mushy on that messaging. Why do you need this thing? There's that big thing in Wired that I know Ben wasn't a big fan of that piece, but that said it's okay. It helps you not look at your phone so much, and that kind of came from Apple. It was still not clear if that's Apple's real mission with this thing, or is it just a status symbol of, like you said, marketing.
Wait, so let me understand this. So on one hand, it's Apple's marketing. On the other hand, Apple is bad at articulating what it's good for.
No, I'm not saying they're bad at articulating what it's good for.
No, this is the tiredest trope when it comes to Apple ever, that Apple sells stuff because of good marketing when it matches feature for feature. I mean, it's like saying, why can you sell a MacBook that's more expensive, like the one sitting in front of Jason? What is it, $1,300 computer that's underpowered and low featured and only has one port? Like, at some point, like, when do we put this argument to bed that Apple sells stuff because of marketing and actually consider that maybe there's other factors going on? I mean, for the
maybe
MacBook,
not marketing might not be the right word. Let's say wow factor, then the Apple allure. Marketing, fine. Let's put that aside. The allure, is that a fair statement then?
I think I mean, Apple has built up a very loyal customer base. No question. I don't think anyone would deny that. And the reason why they built that up, I would argue, is they've delivered a superior user experience for their products relative to the competition. The problem with the user experience is it's something that doesn't go on a feature sheet. It's not something you can check off and compare next to each other. I mean, you started out, when I jumped on, I talked about the Samsung Edge. I mean, why is Samsung losing the high end to Apple? It's not because of features. And given that, Apple has people trust Apple. Like they trust that if they buy an Apple product, they're going to be satisfied with it. And now Apple can trade in on that trust. People will buy the watch regardless of what, because
that's a good point. This is the culmination of reputation, years of reputation.
It's like saying that there's people are going to go see a Disney movie. It's like, that's not, first off, that's earned. Disney earns that label. And second, if they spend too much time not delivering what the promise is, then people will stop going. But there is that truth that you can have a brand that has that attachment to it. And I think that's what we see with Apple is part of this is, yes, people are buying it because it's an Apple product, but Apple has earned a lot of that brand loyalty because of the products that they've released up to now.
They're buying it on faith.
I think there is a certain degree. I hate the faith-based metaphors for Apple, but I think in this case you got it right, which is a product in a new category. There is trust that I think a lot of people are putting in Apple that this will be a great product, even though they may not know quite what they're going to do with it because it's from Apple and they have some trust there, and that trust could easily be harmed if it doesn't live up to the hype. That's true.
Apple probably also gets a pass from journalists who are unwilling to be too strongly critical of it because you don't want to look like an idiot when the thing sells so well.
That's not getting a pass, though. That's being totally rational. I mean, the reality is that I think I was on before the iPhone, Leo, and I think you were being super skeptical of the sales, or at least one of your guests
I'm the idiot
was.
who keeps saying that, yeah.
Right. I mean, and fortunately, most of the time you don't have people like me coming out and reminding you of it.
Yeah. No, I don't mind because I honestly don't think that the iPhone is a better device than, for instance, the Galaxy S6 Edge knocks the iPhone all over the place in so many ways. But that doesn't have anything to do with why people buy the iPhone, apparently. And the same thing with a watch. It has
or
nothing
maybe it's like what you value in a phone is different than what a lot of consumers value.
I think anybody with an objective mind would say Android is a far superior choice.
I'm not even getting into this right now.
That's good objectivity. I would like to see your dictionary later, Leo.
That's objective. If you look at the two and if you came from Mars and you didn't know any of the history and you looked at it, you say, well, I don't understand why people are buying iPhones. Why would you buy an iPhone? That thing is constipated as hell. You got a grid of icons. It's horrible.
I like the problem with this perspective, Leo, is the implication of that is that there's a lot of people who are dumb in the world. And
I'm not saying dumb.
No, you are, though, because you're saying, obviously, this is better. Why do these tens of millions, hundreds of millions of idiots keep buying an inferior product that costs more?
I'm not saying that because that's an insulting thing to say.
Well, yeah, you're not saying
I'm saying people
you're much more polite
they're
about
not
it.
stupid. They're for whatever reason they're buying into. Look at people bought Windows for years, even though it was a horrible operating system. But that's what you bought. That's what everybody bought. You buy a PC, you're going to buy Windows. You buy a phone, you're going to buy an iPhone. It's just the default. It's not that they're dumb. It's they don't have time to figure out which is better. They go with the default.
No offense to Jason, but you were dumb to buy a Mac in the 90s. Like
maybe in the 90s, there was some bad period. No, I agree. OS 9 and so forth.
Those were dark times.
Even the aughts. I mean, like the reality is until the internet came along and most of our applications moved to the internet, there was just lots of stuff you literally could not do on a Mac, and user experience aside. And that was changed with the internet, which removed that kind of like gate. Like there's two different things when it comes to features. Some stuff is like it's a reason to buy, and then there's stuff that's a reason not to buy. And the reason not to buy, if you have it there, it's devastating. Like Windows Phone, for example, like not having a competitive set of apps, and even if the apps you do have, they're all inferior. That's a reason to not buy. It doesn't matter how good the user experience is, or how delightful it is to use, or even if you use all Microsoft services, you're not going to even consider it because there's a gate there. And that was the same thing when it came to the Mac. And to say that people were buying Windows because they were sheep, I think that's insulting to people. The reality is most people aren't tech people. They're not sitting around weighing this stuff. They have stuff they want to get done, and people, and in my experience anecdotally, but normal people who aren't technical at all, consistently find it's easier to go about their day and it's less frustrating, and they can do what they want to do more easily and consistently on an iPhone. And
I agree with you in the 90s. That isn't true, though, after, say, 2005, 2004. I mean, but there's a lot of momentum, and people continue to buy Windows, and it's still a 95% operating system. So that's my point. No, you're right. In the 90s, there was no question. I'm not talking about the 90s.
Fair enough. But well, I mean, you're the one that brought up the analogy.
You're the one who said it was the 90s. I'm saying, let's say 2000. Let's say 10 years ago, 2005. That Windows sold out of momentum more than anything else. Windows Vista or Windows XP sold out of momentum compared to a Mac more than anything else.
Well, I mean, 50% of the market. Sorry, I feel like I'm being rough on you, Leo, but 50% of the market.
No. That's fine.
Is the enterprise market, which again, there remains very good reasons to buy Windows.
I agree. In enterprise, absolutely, I agree 100%. I'm not talking about enterprise. I'm talking about home
in
users.
the consumer market in the U.S., Apple is up to, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's not far from 50%.
It's getting there.
They are crushing.
Yeah, the momentum doesn't last forever.
Consumer space.
We live in a world with friction. We're not in space.
But the problem again with analogy is the momentum is in favor of the iPhone. So I mean, apparently more people are getting dumb over time.
Does that mean it's better? Does that? Well, I mean, it's a silly argument. You like what you like, but I think just because something sells well doesn't make it better.
No, I think that's true. But again, I think objectively you could see that there are, for different people, different operating systems and platforms could be of value to them. And I don't think an alien that came down from outer space would necessarily look at the Android ecosystem and say that is clearly better. I think that it would depend on what that alien's personal preferences were and how they wanted to use their phone. Because I look at Android. Also, we've got to say the difference between a platform and a product, where the iPhone has been
use the
such
Galaxy
a
S6.
Well, I think
that's a good example.
I think you could argue that the Galaxy S6 is one of the few, and in fact, as Ben mentioned, Samsung changing its approach and pulling lots of features out of the Galaxy in order to create a product that, by all accounts, is way closer to what Apple has been doing with hardware, and that people really like it. But a lot of these products aren't there. A lot of the Android experiences aren't that good. And so, it's not just the operating system platform, it's also the hardware, and Apple has excelled at that for quite a while now. And only now are we seeing some Android phones that can match it.
Katy Perry wearing her Mickey Mouse watch. Pharrell wearing his Mickey Mouse watch on The Voice. I think there's something interesting going on here. I think this has to do with Beats more than it does with the watch. I wonder if they're going to these artists in the face of an assault by Tidal, and Tidal's own artists, Jay-Z's friends, Madonna and Beyonce. And so Apple's saying, well, hey, Katie, just remember us when the new album comes out. Pharrell, just remember us when the new album comes out. Here's your $17,000 gold watch.
Well, they've done celebrity seating forever. I mean, even at the Apple Watch debut way back in September, I mean, Gwen Stefani was there. Will.i.am was there. Will.i.am's making his own dumb watch. He has his
own,
yeah. So, I mean, they've always had this. There's always been this, celebrity, aura around this product.
The stakes are higher now.
Oh, yeah, stakes are higher, and I mean, I don't know if we're getting into this later, but yeah, that the Beats thing. One thing they might want to do to set themselves apart is have those exclusive deals. I don't know if a $17,000 watch will necessarily entice someone who has the cash hoard that Katy Perry and Drake have to start using Apple instead, but who knows?
They say if you get all the Mickey Mouse watches in a row, they'll all be tapping their foot in together. Can we try that?
I would assume so. I mean,
I don't know. I think that's a hard thing to do. You got to get the foot tap exactly.
Well, they're all synced at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be pretty cool. All right. Anything more to say about the watch?
I went to the store on Friday on the Fifth Avenue flagship store, and I thought the retail experience is kind of interesting. I mean, usually, the Apple store employees will spend a lot of time with you, as much time as you need, answer all your stupid questions. But this was very different. There's it's very intimate. They're letting you try on the bands. They're putting it on you. There's a little drawer locked underneath the table that they unlock with an iPhone. It's much different than any other time I've been to the Apple store. Is a very unique experience. They're kind of building around this product.
Especially when you say, okay, I'll take one, and then they walk you over to a web browser. And say,
that is interesting.
Good,
too.
here, you can order it online now.
Right. It's the concierge service. The concierge takes you to the webpage. And you can. I went to the Corte Madera store here in north of San Francisco, and it was funny because they have this whole new setup, like you said, and it's I think it's a device stuck on the back of an iPod Touch, so it's not actually in the unit, but they've got this RFID thing.
It's part of their sales package, whatever it is.
And it was the first morning, and they were struggling with it and sort of figuring it out, how you get those drawers unlocked and all of that. There was a learning curve there, but it is fascinating, and it was actually. It'll be interesting to see how that changes the feel of Apple stores, because now they've got those big tables for the Apple Watch right in the middle there. And are those going to be super busy with people? Are they going to be quieter than the other places? I don't really know, but it's going to change the retail experience at Apple stores a little bit.
The Verge went shopping at Galeries Lafayette, at Isekan in Tokyo. These are the non-Apple retailers, but the fancy stores, Selfridges in London, where they are selling, and they have special hushed rooms.
Because luxury, Leo. Because luxury.
Luxury. And of course, did any of you have the nerve to go in and say, I want to look at the edition?
No way.
I want to do that. Can I see the edition?
They would look at my hoodie and say, I don't think so.
Oh, no. They're not going to.
Sorry, sir.
You think they would do that?
No, they wouldn't do it.
They would let you look.
They would play along, yeah.
Yeah. They're not asking for a credit report before you go see it, are they?
Probably not. Besides, this is the Bay Area. Billionaires wear hoodies here.
Right.
So, you know.
Yeah, my startup, I just had an IPO. I just launched it.
My CFO said I should get myself something pretty, so
Was it Tom Warren who made a run for it? One of the Verge people made a run for it.
He's dead now.
Yeah, the security guard simply smiled and watched me head to the door. Good job I'm not a real thief. Otherwise, I'd be in the back of a London taxi typing up my eBay auction right now. Good for you, Tom Warren. He ran for it. You saw Christina, Joanna Stern's review for the Wall Street Journal. She actually just did a funny thing. She got a camera attached to her head temporarily. I mean, it's not a permanent thing. And was shooting her whole day. Like, she wakes up, she has to turn it off. She gets in the shower with it. She says, don't try this at home. Then she's walking through the Wall Street Journal offices. Rupert Murdoch walks up to her and says, hey, what's that? She said, it's the new Apple Watch, Mr. Murdoch. He says, can I see it? And he walks off with it.
It was good. It was funny. It's
a good bit.
It's been translated into Chinese. It's been very popular over here as well.
Oh, really? Interesting. I think this is the best review, actually, of the watch, was the Wall Street Journal.
It's Joanna, yeah.
Joanna's really excellent video.
She's so good, yeah.
We were talking before the show, Steve Kovack and I were talking about there must have been tens of thousands of dollars that The Verge put into the production of Nilay Patel's review, where there's actually, at the end, credits. There's 2 stylists, 6 videographers.
Yeah, I wanted music to play over the end credits, in fact. It's,
unbelievable. And Steve and I had the same experience, which is we flipped through it like a glossy magazine, but didn't read any of the copy. But we looked at the video and the experience. I've never seen anything quite like that in a blog.
I have a feeling a lot of people did what you and I did, Leo, and just kind of scroll through it.
Skimmed it. Yeah.
It's just, it was way too dense for me to read. I tried it on the phone, also too dense. I still have no idea what that review says.
It's a good review. I had to read it on Instapaper, but it's a good review.
It's so sad. They spent so much money on the production, and they've got...
It's very impressive, but to read the article, I ended up reading it on Instapaper.
Yeah. Steve tried to do the same thing. He said it didn't render that well in Instapaper.
It's not great, but it works.
But Nilay did the same thing Joanna did, which is through this video showed the battery life. And one thing that's pretty clear is the battery does die fairly early on. She at 10 p.m. She started at 7 a.m. 10 p.m. was had to go in low power mode. But that's not
7 p.m. to 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. is not early on.
And
that
is
all day.
And she's using it the whole time, right?
Yeah. That's pretty good.
I thought actually the consensus was that the battery was a lot better than everyone expected.
It was sufficient.
Yeah, it seems to me that Apple may have been so worried about all-day battery life that they have cranked back on a lot of other things in order to make sure it gets through the day, which I think is the right decision. But it does lead to, I think, some places where people say, well, it didn't wake up and show me the time fast enough, and it didn't sync with the phone fast enough. Right. And I think those are all decisions that Apple had to make in order to get it through the day. But if you can't get it through the day, there's no point in having that product. So they had to get it to survive a day.
There was a kind of commonality, and both Joanna and Nilay complained about the kind of creepy emoticons, the 3D emoticons. She had trouble with the UI because it's so tiny. She said you have to have doll-like fingers to use the buttons. Although I think she didn't know you could pinch it and zoom it and make it bigger.
You can't pinch. You can twirl the crown to make it bigger.
Okay, yeah.
You can't. It's not multi-touch.
Yeah. A lot of people say, in fact, there was a real commonality, I think, in the reviews. A number of people said that there's a learning curve. Some people said it's really discoverability curve, but nonetheless, time spent with the watch will benefit you because in a few days or weeks you get a little bit better with it.
Yeah, it's good that they that all of these reviewers had some time with it. Because I feel like the best review of this thing is going to be after somebody spends like more than a month with it, to really know what it's like and does it really.
Here comes Rupert
Murdoch.
Can
you really integrate it? No, that old man is going to steal your watch.
Do you think they called Rupert and said, "Look, we're doing this thing. Could you come down to the 4th floor from your Erie? Go ahead, play the. Can you hear the audio?
Try it?
Sure. Yeah, that's okay.
That's really nice.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, actually, I need that back.
At the end of the review, they show the headgear that she shot the whole thing herself. Compared to Neil, who had like 18 cameramen, she's wearing some sort of strange bicycle helmet with a camera in front of it.
And an umbrella.
Yeah, she was talking about it on Twitter. I think because there was like, why don't you like Google Glass something? But that's not the quality. The resolution isn't high enough. So yeah, this is a DSLR.
That is a lot of guts to get on the subway wearing that.
Oh, it's great. I mean, she did a great. She's been. I mean, Joanna Stern has been killing it with her, especially with her video reviews.
Yeah.
They're consistently like both informative and really funny. But no, she's doing a great job. And this was a definite. Yeah, a definite high point.
She's a star.
There's a reason she was working for ABC News for a while, right?
Yeah,
I mean, she's got her videos, her
video
TV
chops.
personality is so great too.
Yep. By the way, she also writes the Galaxy S6, the iPhone 6 has met its match.
Yeah.
The only thing wrong with this S6 is battery life is terrible. But it's got a fingerprint reader that's as good as the Apple. You don't have to swipe it.
I think Samsung might regret the glass back at some point because
it gets hot.
I think the glass back, it's just, you're asking for trouble.
Fingerprints, if nothing else.
I mean, Apple tried that with the 4, right? And they went away from the glass back with the 6.
Boy, the screen, though, 577 dots per inch. No, I mean, the Retina brand has been stolen from Apple, I think.
At some point, you can't see the dots anymore is my only thing. It's like, you can go 1,000 DPI, and unless you're Superman, I'm not sure you can see the dots beyond about 300
With a magnifying glass, you can't see the dots in this thing. Camera is stunning. I would say a strong rival for both the Lumia and the iPhone.
I love that Samsung took features out of that product because it's a more focused product. In fact, that's actually one of my concerns about the watch, the Apple Watch, is
too much.
There's so many features in it instead of focusing on fewer but more solid features.
Right.
We'll have to see.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty sweet looking, well-designed phone.
Took the plastic back off. I think that's really good.
I don't, because I want a battery to put in there. I can't. It's driving me crazy.
So it's interesting. You mentioned that, Leo, because I'm not sure that. I'm very curious to see how the S6 sells, because one reason to think that why objectively Android is superior, in your words, is there's no question the OS is much more flexible, much more customizable. You can arrange things more to your liking. But I think if you're dealing in a premium product where someone's paying several $100s for a phone, and they are buying it because they value that customization and flexibility, I would assume they probably value it in the hardware as well. And I think this is actually an advantage that Samsung actually always had over HTC, for example. HTC has been making beautiful phones for a while, and it hasn't exactly helped them that much. And I think that someone who values that in their operating system, I think, is more likely to value that. Sorry about that. Value that in the hardware, to be able to switch batteries, to be able to have the expandable storage, things like that. And it's interesting to hear you say that you're disappointed that they prioritized the qual or the the industrial design, or the aesthetic, I should say, over the rest of it. Because I kind of suspect there's a lot of people that are going to think that way. So it'll be interesting to see how it sells.
It's a pretty spectacular shift for Samsung, which was making utilitarian, industrial design phones like the Note 4, which I was carrying prior to this. I'm not a Samsung fan, by the way. I thought the S5 was awful. I've been very disappointed by the junkware Samsung's been lading into its Android, and yet this phone is easily the most beautiful phone I've ever held. This is the Edge, so it's got the infinity screen. I wish I had the infinity battery life, but unfortunately not.
See, they're following Apple in so many different areas.
Yeah, isn't that
Even
funny?
people complaining about the battery.
Yeah, Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's the size of the S6 again?
It is more like, it's very close to an
5 inches,
iPhone
right?
6. Yeah, it's very close to iPhone 6. 2550 by 1400. So if you have an iPhone 6, and put it next to it, the width, the height is a little taller, but the thickness is the same. It's about 7 millimeters. Weight-wise, it's about the same. It just doesn't run that constipated iOS.
Yeah. Why don't they invite you to things,
I
Leo?
can't understand it.
Why does that not happen? I don't understand.
Did you read Kushal Dev's Medium piece? This is very interesting. He said, I did not write this piece until I was no longer working for a company because I know Apple app developers do not want to speak out about this because they're afraid of getting slapped down by Apple. He says, and I completely agree with him, that the review process in the App Store is hurting users, partly because bug fixes are way delayed by weeks, partly because Apple has decided to be a nanny and prohibit all sorts of apps that, we should be able to see. We're not 4-year-olds. And I'm not just talking about adult content, but political content, all kinds of content. Apple is blocking apps that ridicule public figures, that show too much skin, apps with jobs, themes, legal marijuana information, gun images, search engines, drones. Steve Jobs once argued he was actually offering us freedom from porn. Apple says if you want to criticize a religion, write a book. I think Apple's putting itself in a very interesting position here. Obviously, again, people don't care. So they sold 75 million phones. Whoops, I don't know where that's what I'm getting there. There we go. But this is a strong indictment of Apple as a gatekeeper, as a bad, frankly, steward of the App Store, because it's so hard to get bug fixes out, so hard to test apps. Anyway, I'm not here to bash Apple. Actually, I wasn't intending to do that.
So I think there's a bunch of things in this piece. A lot of this is not new at all. This is a lot of this is fundamentally just complaining about App Store moderation policies that a lot of them have been in place since Steve Jobs was making those rules.
Right.
I do think there's some interesting things in there about how the backlog, in the present day, the backlog creates issues where it's hard to get bug fixes out. I've heard from developers who said that they have some updates that are sort of just a few nice-to-have features, but not major features, and they don't bother to release them because they don't want to go through the process. Yeah. And I think if you're going to be Apple and say we're going to watch everything that gets submitted, there's some responsibility you have to take to get the backlog down. You've got to find a way to make it so that your developers aren't spending weeks waiting for their apps to get out. But
also kind of arbitrary enforcement of the rules. It's never clear whether your app's going to get approved or not.
Well, we learned this. So a good friend of mine is a developer of an app that got approved and then told to be removed. It was applauded and featured on the store, and then some other part of Apple said, no, we don't want you to do that.
Right.
And that happens sometimes, and I think that a bunch of things are going on here. I think Steve Jobs was a real key figure in defining what the rules were, and with him gone, Apple is willing to change, but there are parts of Apple that are changing and other parts that are not changing as quickly, if at all. And so I think inside Apple, there's conflict. And when Apple is a black box like it is, it's very hard. You end up with these bizarre behaviors of like, they say yes, and they say, we'll feature you. And then they say, please take it out of the store, which doesn't make any sense. It is absolutely problematic. I think the idea that comes from Steve Jobs of we need to make the App Store someplace that if it's not really appropriate for the lowest common denominator of essentially a child, we need to keep it out of the store, is also probably kind of crazy now. I'm optimistic that Apple is changing and that their approach is going to change here. But right now, it's kind of a mess, and I think that's because there are parts of Apple that want to change and other parts that don't.
10.10.3 came out. We're just finished the Apple stuff. We'll get it all done. You got a MacBook. 10.10.3. Go ahead.
There's just one thing.
Please.
One more thing on this point, and you said you didn't come on to bash Apple. I didn't come on to defend Apple, but I think first off, I completely agree with both of you and with Jason's point that there are significant issues with the App Store process. I think this is something I've been consistently very critical of Apple about, not just from the randomness of it, but also the fact that I think they're hurting themselves by not enabling sustainable businesses. And I think Jason's point about we look at Apple as being a monolith, but there's different factions within Apple. and there's parts of Apple that are still very much connected to the old Apple, as it were. And one of those sections is app review. If you look at where it sits in organization, that organization is still kind of the old Apple. That said, I thought this article was disappointing. It was disappointing primarily for the title. Apple's App Store review process is hurting users. It is hurting users in a by extension sort of thing. It's hurting developers. And by developers being hurt and not releasing updates and things like that, users are certainly hurt. The issue, though, is nowhere in this article does it acknowledge the way that the App Store and Apple's stringent control, and again, the trust that people have in Apple, has fundamentally changed the way that users think about software and think about apps. To go back to Windows, people were scared. They were scared to download stuff. No one would do it. And the App Store and this process completely changed the way people approached it, both helping users and helping developers, frankly. And I think that there's an issue here where, yes, absolutely believe there are things that Apple needs to change. Absolutely believe it could be better. I, again, criticize them consistently on this point, but I think without acknowledging the real benefits that are here and the benefit it has to normal people, it does this argument a disservice. And I wish that would have included that kind of. It goes too far in saying that user. I think on balance, users benefit from app review, and without at least acknowledging that balance, I think it makes the argument weaker than it ought to be, because there's absolutely a lot of good points in there.
Apple certainly does a better job of an app review than Microsoft, but I'm not sure that it does a better job than Android at this point.
They're not. They're doing some very limited review, but it seems to not be at the scale that Apple is.
And I don't note that there are particularly bad. I mean, there are bad apps on all the app stores. Yeah. There are dopey apps on all the app stores.
There is. I mean, Apple does provide an additional layer of scrutiny here.
There's malware in all the app stores, I might add.
It's very hard. There's a lot less of it on the Apple Store because they do scan and have people checking. Right. You know, it can get through and then they run the kill switch on it. But yeah, I think there's a lot less of it.
And beyond that, I think the way that the apps are sandboxed much more aggressively on iOS, perhaps leading to your constipation, Leo. You can't really hurt your phone by downloading that from the App Store, and I'm not sure you can say the same thing about Android. At least previously, I know they've instituted a new level of control in the last couple months. But that, I think again, it's kind of this mushy, hand wavy sort of stuff. But that's how Apple gets trust. Like, people feel safe using an iPhone. They feel like everything's going to be okay. They can just download stuff and delete it, and it doesn't, and it's going to still work okay. And that accumulated over time is why Apple keeps a profit margin. It's why they sell the watch on the first weekend. And I think it matters. It's not marketing. It's not people being brainwashed. It's that, people don't want to be techies. They just want to live their life and have something that helps them do it better. And Apple's earned the trust that they're going to help them do it better than other brands will. And the reason I argue about this is not, again, I don't own any Apple stock. I don't want to be a defender, but I think that a core thing that I think business analysis and strategy, why they get Apple wrong a lot, is they don't value this sort of middle, this gray area, this consumer psychology aspect, user experience aspect. I think Apple excels at, and I think that makes it hard to understand why the company does so well, and it's why people get the predictions wrong all the time.
Yeah. I didn't think the Apple
I just
Watch
find
would
it,
sell
I
well
find
at
it
all.
intellectually fascinating, and that's why I like getting.
But
into
is that
it
any
with
different than,
argument.
say, making a great brand like a Burberry raincoat, which isn't demonstrably better than some other brand raincoat, but outsells it because the brand is better? Isn't it like that? I mean, isn't it just saying, well, there's not. I come from a background of celebrating technical excellence, not marketing excellence. And I think Apple has clearly got marketing excellence behind it 100%. But I'm not convinced that reflects a technical excellence, to be honest, at this point anymore.
Well, I mean,
let's talk about 10.10.3, because I think this is a little frustrating. There is a backdoor vulnerability that 10.10.3 is vulnerable to. Apple has patched it, or 10 that all OS 10 is vulnerable to. Apple has patched it in 10.10.3, this root pipe. but they have decided that it's too hard to fix it in previous versions of OS X, meaning that millions of Apple Macintosh users are vulnerable to it. It is an escalation backdoor. It's actually an API that was put in there by Apple, and it allows escalation to root privileges from any user account in the system. Maybe it's not a real threat. I don't know. But the fact that Apple's patching it only on the latest version of their operating system seems to me not great. Then there's the iCloud.
You got to keep in mind that Apple's actually spent the last couple of versions of OS X not pushing the compatibility forward.
Right.
So there's a huge number of existing Macs, almost every Mac made since 2009, and a lot of them from 2008, and in fact, iMacs from 2007 can run the current version of the operating system. So yeah, they would have to update for free.
Well, but there are other reasons.
They could update it.
We had somebody in the audience today who runs some specialized sign-making software that won't run on Yosemite.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just saying it is not as catastrophic as if this was an operating system that didn't run past 2-year-old machines,
right,
and that you had to pay a lot of money to upgrade. But it's not quite a free upgrade. It's not quite as bad as that.
Right.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing this up, Leo, because now I can hopefully prove that I'm not all completely in the back for Apple. I think this is a very poor decision, and frankly, I think Apple's security record, in particular with OS X, is getting worse, not better, and it's never been particularly great. And I think it's a bit of a dangerous game. I can understand Jason's point, like they're offering the updates for free. They go back a long ways. Like, why aren't you up to date? There are reasons, particularly in some professional contexts, where you're dealing with certain kinds of specialized software and stuff where you might not be up to date, and it just doesn't seem something that. Yes, there's like what's the old thing? Like Apple prioritizes one Apple, 2 users, and like three developers in that order. This seems to be taking the prioritizing Apple and what makes life easier for them a little too far. And unfortunately, it's part of a pattern of Apple being slow with updates and not as far reaching as they probably should. And it's a dangerous game because it messes with that trust. Like if someone has an issue here, and because Apple wasn't aggressive at updating it, like that's a problem. And I was disappointed and sadly not that surprised by this news.
And I should say, my point is that it could have been worse because at least you can update many systems for free. But at Macworld, we had a system that was still running Snow Leopard because there was specific software that didn't even run on Lion, let alone Mountain Lion or Mavericks or Yosemite.
Yeah,
so it absolutely does happen.
Yeah.
And Apple's security record has not been great.
How do you like the MacBook?
I like a lot about it. I love the screen. I love the lightness. I love the Force Touch trackpad, and I don't like the keyboard.
See, I admire their willingness to really strike out. I mean, I don't mean not strike out in the baseball way, but to venture forth.
Yes.
And try something new. And remember when the Air came out, everybody on the Intel side, including Intel itself, imitated. And so, it's an interesting thing to make a device that has one connector, has, nothing else, is very light. I was just holding it. It's amazingly light. You don't like the keyboard, but I thought the keyboard was okay. And I've read differing opinions.
It depends on how you feel. Some people have very strong opinions about keyboards.
Keyboards are very personal,
and they are. And this one has a lot less keyboard travel, so that's the amount of space that the key depresses when you press it. It's about I'd say like between 1/3 and 1/2 of the travel.
That new spring really feels nice.
So that's what they've done to make up for the reduced physical movement, because they need to make this as thin as possible. Right. Is they've got the new butterfly switch. They've got the stainless steel pad at the bottom. It's clicky. The keys are wider. They're more stable. I mean, there are all these other things they've done to make up for the fact that when you hit it, it doesn't move very much. For me, I just don't like that reduced travel, even with all of those other changes. To me, it's like a halfway point between typing on glass on a touch screen and typing on a traditional keyboard. It's like a little bit better than on a touch screen where there's no feedback, but it's not that far away.
I've used ultra-thin notebooks. The Acer S7, which I love, Windows machine, also had a keyboard that was very difficult to type accurately with because it had so little travel. They fixed it in the second generation, the Haswell generation. I feel like this is better than that. But I haven't used it for that long, so I'll have to try it for a little bit longer. How about speed? Because that's the other concern. It's a Core M processor.
Yeah, it's about as fast as a MacBook Air from 2011.
Yeah.
And if you're somebody who cares about speed, it's going to be an issue. But the fact is, I think most people don't use the processor speed they've got. And the SSD,
That's absolutely true.
And the SSD really makes up for a lot of that, because so much of what we think of as computer speed is actually slow disk.
Yes.
And now that, I mean, the biggest upgrade I ever made in a computer was when I went to an SSD-only system for the first time, because then you realize, oh my God, I was waiting for disk that entire time.
Yeah.
And now when I use a computer that's still got a spinning disk in it, it makes me very sad. So that makes up for a lot of the ills of the Core M being slow. That said, if you're somebody who's like rendering video, it's a bad idea.
Don't render video on a MacBook.
I don't recommend it.
So, Jason, who do you think should buy this? I mean, it still costs more than a MacBook Air. And, I mean, you're paying for a design and a Retina screen,
you're
less battery life.
I like the Retina screen.
You're paying for the Retina screen. This is basically a MacBook Air with a Retina screen, and you're paying what you'd pay for the MacBook Pro 13, and what you're getting is something that's not as powerful but is thinner and lighter. And it's a matter of priorities. I mean, Apple now is making 3 different lines. They've essentially got 5 computer models, laptop models. So you got to pick. Do you want cheaper but no Retina? Do you want more full-featured and powerful with Retina but heavier? Or do you want something that's not very powerful but has Retina and is super thin and light? Pick 2 of these things. So I think for a lot of people who want that Retina display and don't really care that it's not super powerful because they're not going to use that superpower anyway, I think it makes sense. In the end, this is going to be the new MacBook Air, essentially, right? The Air is around because they can make a non-Retina laptop for less than $1,000, and you can't really make Apple can't sell a Retina MacBook for less than $1,000 yet, and so that's why it's still around. But I think it's today it is of limited appeal, and in 6 months it'll be more appealing, and in a year it'll be even more appealing, especially as the USB-C stuff starts to come out.
I have it on the Pixel, and I love it. I just love it.
I get the kind of consensus that it's of limited appeal, but I don't understand that, honestly. I think it's of limited appeal to us and to tech people, but again, anecdotally, I've talked to people and like looking at, not to use the tiredest cliche in the book, but looking at how my wife uses her computer, for example. I don't think most people plug anything into their computers ever.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, especially phone, like.
But we're unusual because
we're unusual. Yeah. I mean, I think for especially in the big difference here is that most people's camera is their phone. And now that is the case, that was kind of the last thing that people plugged in regularly. And now having the USB-C being kind of like an emergency hatch where there's a port if you need it, the expectation is you don't use it most of the time. I think that's going to be totally fine for the majority of people. Again, I would only buy one if I had a separate desktop computer. Like I know Jason has,
it's
an
accessory
iMac, so it makes
exactly.
sense.
It's not your
right. But I think for the majority of people though, it's perfectly fine as their normal computer. And I think it's gonna. I think Jason's right. It's the MacBook Air still exists because they can't get it under $1,000. But I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be more successful than people think. I mean,
sold out,
it's
right?
Spectacular in person.
It's backordered, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's hard to. It's always hard to tell with a new product.
The people who complain about the processor being this Core M are going to be the same people who complain about the one port. And it's like there is a whole, and it's the people who are in our chat room and watch the show, and that's fine. Not every product is for everybody, but there's a whole, Ben's right, there's a whole class of people who just don't care about all that, and they want it thin and light, and they want the pretty Retina screen, and it's got all of that, and it's
so light.
There are a lot of nice things about it. I think we're gonna, all of our concerns about it are going to fall away over time, and then just like with the Air, in 2 or 3 years we're going to say, oh yeah, of course it makes sense.
That said, most of the people don't care about Retina.
Oh, I care.
Sadly enough,
once you start using a high resolution screen, it's hard to go back.
No, you care. The people who don't care about
I think they
there's only one port, and
don't you think people can tell? They look at immediately. You look at it, once you start using it, and you go, now I see the difference. I agree. Until you see the difference, you don't know the difference. But it's like the difference in HD and SD. There were people who said when HD came out, oh, nobody's going to care. Yeah, you care once you see the two together and you know.
But, as computer nerds, we also get hung up on specs, right? But the most important specs for that are it's thin and it's light. Those are the most important things. Looking at it and saying, oh, my God, it's so thin. Oh, it's so light.
The screen looks remarkable.
And the screen is good, too, right? So I think that comes first for people. And it's very easy for computer people to say, oh, that's all just about looks,
right?
And it's really about what's inside,
it's
right?
Functional.
For some people, it's about looks. It's about
I've come around. I I mocked the Chromebooks when they came out, and I've completely come around on
This
that.
reminds me a lot of like a thin Chromebook
I
Pixel,
love the
actually.
Chromebook.
Our concept
the
of what a
Pixel is
computer
amazing.
has changed dramatically. The Pixel's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. All right, now we're finally done with Apple. I'm not going to, not one more word about Apple.
right.
That's it. We're done. We're over.
I can go home now.
No, stay here because there's
okay.
other stuff.
All
But
right.
I'm just not going to do any more Apple stuff. So for those of you who've been sitting through the podcast with your fingers in your ears going, I don't want to hear it. No. You can now take your fingers out of the ears.
You got to motion to them to just come back.
Darth Vader is Luke's. By the way, I enjoyed. I'm actually rewatching Star Wars because I bought all 6 of them. Bought it on Google so that I could play it then on iTunes and on Vudu because of the Disney Anywhere thing. Don't buy it on Amazon because then Disney Anywhere won't work, and Disney won't have episode 4, A New Hope, because that's a Fox, and this is a big deal. I don't know why. It is the most recent version, not with all the new
special editions.
Special editions.
Yeah.
I suspect it's the
Not the
Blu-ray.
originals.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got really caught up into this
bummer.
because we're watching. Yeah, we're watching. I'm going, what? Han shot first. And then I went to Wikipedia and I found out there's this whole movement. There's a documentary about it. Whole movement of people who want to get back to the original Star Wars.
There, in fact, is a guy who actually just got hired to do professional 4K restorations of other films, whose name is Harmy, and he's created the Harmy's despecialized editions, which it's amazing. He's used like 20 different sources to create the highest resolution possible equivalent of the original releases.
And you know what's annoying is, look, George could do this, but George has decided I don't like the original version. So just because you grew up with it doesn't mean I'm gonna support it. So
my theory is that at some point we will see those, and it'll be sold as like for the true film buff and fans of the 70s version, and they'll soft pedal it. They won't say it's the real version.
In front of the Harmy video about how he did it, they've got an ad for the digital
for the special editions.
Special editions.
That's
Are they confused? So
It's Google.
It's
a Google
Google.
ad.
It's automatic.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're doing. It's really,
I
if
think
you
they
haven't
know
watched
exactly what
this
they're
YouTube
doing.
video of how they made the despecialized edition,
It's staggering how many. They use the Laserdisc, they use a TV broadcast, they use a 35mm print that they scanned.
TV broadcast.
Yeah, there was an HD TV broadcast that had stuff that wasn't ever in the Blu-ray, and so it was a high-res version that they used. So they took all of these sources, and this is what the video is. It's amazing. And of course, they're not legally available, but the work they did, this is not like some minor fan edit. They have
this guy's
completely
insane.
It is. They color corrected it all to look like the right color palette from the original. It's great.
Well, and they do point out there's some really horrible stuff that Lucas did.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, you can't change Eddie Baru's dialogue.
No, you can't. The blue, at least the milk is still blue.
The milk is still blue. They didn't change that. It's really fascinating. Where do you get the despecialized? It's probably
on the internet,
secret
in the dark
spot
corners
on
of the
dark
internet.
corners of the internet.
You search,
It's
you may
not,
find.
It's not that dark. It's pretty easy.
No, it's very easy.
If you grew up, see, I was 21 when it came out, so I didn't grow up with this. So, but I understand if you were 8 years old and you watched the original Star Wars 24 times, you're going to be upset.
Well, those 90s Mac-based special effects that they built in the special edition now look old. And in fact, if they're going to look old, you might as well look at the original models.
Right. That's actually a good point. Yeah.
So it'll happen. They'll come back
George
someday.
says the original Star Wars was only 1/3 of what I wanted to do, and I've just been making it better all along.
Yeah.
There you go.
Rueful laugh.
That's why like in episode 7, J.J. Abrams seems to be going back to the puppet thing, which I think really makes more sense. And everything that we've seen from like behind the scenes and stuff like that, he's been using actual like animatronics and Muppets or whatever, and that just feels more real. We don't need CG stormtroopers.
I'm watching
That
the
just
Empire.
makes no sense.
Watching the Empire Strikes Back, and Yoda really is obviously Fozzie Bear.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
Or Grover.
Or Grover.
I mean, I think people could put up with the making, having more effects and stuff like that. People would be justifiably annoyed. But when you get into changing plot details, and that's why people focus on the Han shot first thing, because that like changes the fundamental nature of the character,
right?
And like that, and that's why that puts the lie to Lucas's argument that this is what I always wanted to do. Because no, if you wanted Han to shoot first, you'd have had, or if you wanted Han to shoot second, you would have had him shoot second, but you didn't.
You had him shoot first.
I think, Right, exactly. And that's if he had only done the extra stuff, I think people would still complain. But I think a lot of us, including myself, be like, get over it. It's still the same movie. But once you're actually changing stuff.
Yeah, but wait a minute. They took the Ewoks song out.
Yeah, and they put in a different.
That's not okay.
I got the Yub Nub.
Yeah, and there's no Yub Nub in the. And it shows like scenes from the prequels at the end.
That's not
it's not cool. It's not cool. I think it'll eventually get resolved. I think the Harmy's Despecialized shows that there is a market for this.
No kidding.
And eventually, now that Disney controls Lucasfilm, I think it will happen. Like I said, to make George feel better, they'll be like, we'll have the special editions over here, and we'll have the original editions over here. And everybody will be happy. But in the meantime,
nostalgic.
If you like the originals, seek out the internet.
Look at the motion blur that was introduced by this really crappy digitization. I mean, just terrible. All right, I didn't mean to get into this, but
Star Wars segment. Now, no more Star Wars either. No Apple, no Star Wars.
There might be more Star Wars.
All right, fair enough. No promises.
Yub Nub will appear later in the show to sing.
That's the title of the show, right? Yub
Nub.
That's gonna be,
No Yub Nub. What they do with Yub Nub? Our show today brought to you by GoToMeeting. Oh, those folks at Citrix, they make such a useful product. We use it all the time. I don't want to do a phone meeting anymore without GoToMeeting running. First of all, it's a great way to do a conference call, but then if you want, you can share screens, you could turn on the HD camera, see each other. It makes a meeting over the internet as good or maybe even better than a meeting in person. And with GoToMeeting, you can meet from any computer, any tablet, any smartphone, no travel expenses, no traffic. Your team can join by clicking a link, no signups. It's really easy, even if you're sharing a meeting for the first time with somebody who's never used it before. It really takes 30 seconds and they're up and running. They love it. HD quality webcam makes it seem like you're in the room. You can share screens. Everybody sees what you're seeing. I want you to try it free. This is the one. This is the killer. This is literally the #1 meeting app. You got to try it. 30 days free for you. That's it. No credit card or anything. Just click, try it free on GoToMeeting.com. GoToMeeting.com. I'm just asking you, try it free. See what you think. GoToMeeting.com. We thank them so much for their support. They're a long time. Citrix has been a long time supporter. We're coming close to our 10th anniversary. Next week will be our 10th anniversary show, and all the original folks from Twit will be here. John C. Dvorak, Patrick Norton, Kevin Rose, Robert Heron, Roger Chang, David Prager. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to look back. We have video. We have lots of stuff coming up. So make sure you set your DVR. I don't know, whatever it is you do to watch next Sunday's Twit, the 10th anniversary edition. I'm very excited about that. If you missed anything from this week on Tech, This Week in Tech, you missed some great stuff, and we have a edited down, I call it Harmy's edition of Twit right here.
Previously on Twit.
Hi, how's it going? I'm getting a little freaked out right now.
Really? Just slightly freaked out.
Before you buy.
This is the Samsung Galaxy S6.
This is the best Android phone on the market today, and I've looked at them all. It's probably going to be the phone of 2015.
Floss Weekly.
We see people who would start talking about a certain issue, and suddenly there's about 300 people that descend on them on Twitter. And Twitter lacks the filtering mechanisms to allow you to block out any of that abuse.
And what did you do to sort of combat some of that with regard to Gamergate?
Well, the short version of the story is I got drunk and wrote a 200-line Perl script which broke the internet.
This Week in Google.
Google has a patent for a cow avoidance mechanism in their self-driving cars.
I have this vision that some Googlers get patents just for the
You think this is just for the lulls?
Yeah.
Twit.
Cow avoidance patent.
Live from Petaluma. Here, have an egg.
Yeah. And I believe that this is actually the way we're going to be bringing you into the Twit TV network from now on, right? We're just going to, you're going to be a head in a jar.
I love it.
I hope you saw it. Do we have a week ahead? All right, let's see what's coming up because we've got a big week ahead. Mike Elgin.
Coming up this week, Intel reports earnings Tuesday. Netflix does the same on Wednesday. Also on Wednesday, Huawei is set to launch its Ascend P8 flagship smartphone at a special event in London. And Etsy's long-awaited IPO happens Thursday. That's what's coming up this week. Back to you, Leo.
Mr. Michael Elgin, our news director, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 1700 UTC for Tech News Today. and our daily look at tech news. And, of course, there's Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Megan Maroney hosts. That's 2300 UTC. It's kind of before you go to bed, you can watch that.
Well, we covered Star Wars and we covered Apple versus Android.
Nothing else to say.
Who else can we make angry on the internet today, Leo?
You could tell us what happens in episode 4 of Game of Thrones, season 5. Spoiler alert.
Oh my God.
How many die? Twitter is actually getting quite aggressive in the marketplace, cutting off 2 of its fire hose subscribers. What is the Twitter fire hose, Steve Kovack?
That's these certain specialized companies that they give full access. They call it the fire hose to literally every tweet and every favorite and everything that goes into that we input into Twitter. And different companies do really cool stuff with it.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. They're very restrictive of who they let have that data, and sometimes they buy the companies that do really interesting stuff with that data.
Like GNIP.
GNIP, yep, that was the last one. And so it's not unusual. They've been doing this. I think this company has been doing a lot of social media analytics, and now they're boosting up their Facebook business instead of Twitter, which probably makes more sense. More people on Facebook anyway. But I think the fire hose is interesting. There are a lot of cool companies doing cool stuff. My favorite, just as a journalist and a news junkie, is Data Miner. Have you heard of them?
Tell me about it.
They're really cool. They're building this like live dashboard for journalists. So basically, if someone tweets about a tornado hitting or some kind of disaster or anything like that, journalists who are on Data Miner can get like instant alerts for those kind of things. And we at Business Insider have actually been the first on some stories because we get alerted to that kind of stuff. It's a really cool product, and it just shows the power some of these companies can have when they have that fire hose if Twitter lets them.
Twitter said they're not going to let anybody have the fire hose anymore. They've got their own internal analytics since the acquisition of GNIP. Yeah. And they're just, it just shows, I mean, I feel bad for these guys. Data Sift, I think, is one of them. And they're going to shift over to mining analytics from Facebook. But I have to think that their customers are going to be a little unhappy when Data Sift gets cut off in a month. And no longer will you get those insights. Not only will their customers be unhappy, their investors, they've raised $78 million to date. And I think you got to think that company is a lot less valuable all of a sudden. I feel bad because I feel like Twitter made its bones by having these open platform and letting people do stuff with it. And that's one of the reasons Twitter got so good. And now that they're, successful, they're going to pull up the ramp and say, okay, we'll take it from here.
Well, the issue is Twitter isn't that successful. I mean, it's a phenomenal service. Every time I talk about the company, I reiterate this, but there's no tech product or service that's more important to me personally. Like, I would gladly trade away my iPhone and my Mac for a Windows computer and Android phone, and with Twitter as opposed to the opposite. That said, realistically, and the reason why it's so great for me is also what makes it so valuable is that it understands me, understands my interests. Like, this idea of there being an interest graph as opposed to a social graph is super powerful. And quite frankly, if you're an advertiser and you want to connect to me, Twitter is the best way to do it. And that's why Twitter is monetizing quite well. The problem is there just aren't that many people on Twitter. I mean, the official count is 250 million or something like that. I think there's strong reason to believe the actual number of regular users is significantly less than that. And that's a problem for them. And so I think what you see and will continue to see, and from a business perspective, justifiably so, is them pulling in all potential money-making avenues, and this is one of them. To be frank, probably in 2012, when they cut off the access for third-party Twitter clients, like, oh, but you can still do this other stuff. They should have ripped the Band-Aid completely off and pulled it all in-house. If you're gonna screw developers, screw them all at once instead of kind of dribbling it out over the years. But I think it's a business kind of imperative for Twitter. And I agree with you, Leo. There's no question that Twitter was built on the back of third-party developers. But I think it's just a reality of their business that they have to do this.
Well, when Hillary Clinton wanted to announce her candidacy today, She took to YouTube and Twitter to do it. And that tweet, which everybody was watching, and by the way, she completely redesigned her Twitter page and everything. It's clear this is the campaign page. And this is a big part of what a presidential campaign is today. Twitter apparently pushing celebrities, according to TechCrunch, and publishers to stop using Meerkat and start using Twitter's own Periscope.
Shocking.
Yeah. Oh, it fits in the same vein.
It just feels petty, though. Come on, really?
But that's like dog bites, man. I mean, come on. What do you think's going to happen there?
Yeah, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. They have an exclusive with Madonna. Now, there's a brand I'm interested in. And they've apparently, according to TechCrunch, Twitter's been contacting celebrities who use Meerkat, trying to convince them that Meerkat is dying and they should use Periscope instead. Sources also say Twitter has been in touch with media companies that use Meerkat, going so far as to imply if they don't exclusively use Periscope, Twitter could cut off their access to Amplify, which is some sort of thing that
magical
Twitter does.
Secret Twitter thing.
Twitter thing.
But hasn't Meerkat usage and Periscope usage kind of evened out now after the glow of the Periscope launch kind of waned off, and now it seems like they're equal. But at the same time, Madonna tried her Meerkat premiere, and it totally bombed.
What happened? I didn't see it. And that's one of the problems with these. If you weren't there live, you ain't going to see it. What happened? What'd you do?
Exactly. Apparently it didn't work really well, and then she went somewhere else or something like that. I just heard, I didn't get to watch it. I got an alert that Madonna's video is coming. I don't know if that's the audience you want to be showing. It's still a bunch of tech journalists using it. I don't know if that's how you should premiere your next music video. But
what's stopping Snapchat from doing this?
From doing
seems like
live streaming?
Live streaming, that like Snapchat.
They do something similar. They have their stories.
Right.
They call it live. It's not like directly live, but those seem to be more popular because they show it's like a curation of stuff, either like Coachella or Final Four or stuff in your neighborhood. That stuff seems to be doing really well because it's really nicely curated. It's not as raw as just a straight up live stream.
Yeah, I think I think big picture, looking at Snapchat versus Periscope or whatever is going to be akin to like Facebook versus Twitter. Like one is just bigger and more meaningful generally, but the reason why Twitter kind of had no choice but to, pull out the knives on Meerkat is one thing that Twitter does better than anyone else and has always been better is the real-time stuff when something is happening. And the issue is that video is infinitely more powerful than text when it comes to relaying something happening real time, and Twitter has to own that space. Like that's a core value of Twitter that Twitter does that nobody else does. And Meerkat was very threatening. Again, not because it's had a ton of users, but it had the potential to unbundle kind of a core part of that of what Twitter is, and it's very fortuitous or strategic or smart or whatever adjective you want to use that Twitter acquired Periscope when it did, and that it was ready to be released when it did. I would expect them to continue to be very aggressive.
Jason, we've lost you, Jason. He's writing.
I'm trying to come
jokes
up with
in the chat
I'm
room.
trying to imagine all of the McDonough menu items right now.
I like that.
And the best I've got is the extra virgin, like a virgin olive oil salad dressing, but and I'm trying to do like fillet of fish, Ray of Light kind of thing,
Yeah,
but I
there's
haven't gotten
there.
it yet. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
But Twitter, you were saying.
I think it's interesting. Twitter is such a mixed bag because on the one hand, it's a cesspool. And on the other hand, it is really a valuable signaling mechanism. When Twitter first came out, somebody and I don't really understand.
Sadly, it's signaling cess.
It's signaling, suck. Well, but somebody likened it to a dial tone, an internet dial tone, and I think it's kind of that.
So what makes Twitter great is this asymmetry where a random person can ask me a question and I can answer it on Twitter, and I love that. Yeah. The problem is that a random wacko can say things to me on Twitter too, and I have to listen to that at least until I block them. So it's funny because I love it, and yet I am, and my friends and my colleagues in this industry are increasingly realizing that there's some stuff that you got to keep personal. And Marco Arment on his Accidental Tech podcast this week, they were talking about the same thing. And I've seen this in other places too. A lot of the dark social stuff, private social groups, things like Slack channels, where you retreat because you know everybody there. And on one level, it's a real shame that people who have followings and who like interacting with people on Twitter have to retreat for some of that stuff because you're losing interesting conversations you might have. At the same time, people are only human beings, and the toll of dealing with some of the people you end up dealing with on Twitter becomes so great that you take some of your stuff and you put it behind the personal shield and say, I'm just not going to share this with people I don't know anymore. And I think that's an issue for Twitter.
Is that a problem? I was going to say, is that a problem for Twitter?
I think to a certain degree it is, because if you're somebody who's got 50,000 followers or a million followers or whatever, you need ways. You either need to be able to manage what you see, or you need to just give up interacting and become just a broadcaster. And I would hope that Twitter sees some value in providing tools for those people to be able to stay in the mix on Twitter without dealing with the craziness. I mean, if you're a verified user, I think you get a few more features in terms of like only seeing, only seeing
you can
people you follow, and there's a
say,
tailored view and stuff like that.
I only want to see other verified users in
You
my
can.
Twitter stream.
You can.
Because you riffraff are ruining it
Yeah,
for
and
the
that seems
rest of
wrong,
us.
doesn't it? I mean, that seems not like a good use of Twitter
verified.
at all.
I could turn it on, but it's like I don't want to do
Yeah,
that.
I agree with you. But I have seen that this is the downside of Twitter. So people are, there's that initial flush of like, I'm going to share everything on Twitter. I'm going to share my pictures of waffles and, that I'm making breakfast I'm making for my kids. And
that's all social media, right? Don't we go through these phases of putting everything on Facebook or Instagram too, right?
Right. And I think we're just at that point now where Twitter has had enough problems with bad behavior that people are pulling back a little bit from it, which is a shame. But I'm with Ben. I find Twitter indispensable, and I wouldn't.
I keep wanting
quit
to
Twitter
delete it,
ever.
and I can't.
I can't. I talk to so many interesting people. I feel like being accessible to people. I learn things from all sorts of people I don't
follow
know.
you. During the watch thing, I was watching you and Glenn Fleischman and others talking together, and it's great. It's like you're a fly on the wall to these other people, to these conversations that are fascinating.
And I think one of the problems is if you lose sight of the fact that there are flies on the wall. That's a mistake, because you have to realize you are in public and you are having a conversation in public. And if it's a conversation you're not comfortable having in public, you shouldn't have it in public. And I think that's just one of those social media lessons that we all have to keep learning. But I think Twitter has great value. I just, I think it's what I use it for has changed over time.
Yeah. I feel like Twitter, and to some degree, and much more so Meerkat and Periscope, is a very narcissistic medium. It is a medium for people who are say, watch me, look at me, like I'm not. But
right. Well, I mean,
I was here first. Gosh darn it.
I think the problem is that do you have something to say or not? If all you want is for people to watch you,
well, that's
a problem,
right there.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. But we did a Meerkat stream when I was on MacBreak Weekly with you a few weeks ago, right after the Apple event.
Yeah.
And it was literally like the after show behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And that was actually kind of a lot of fun. But for every one of those, there's one where it's just like there's no point in why are you even doing this? It's a new medium. That's going to happen.
Those are all my Periscopes. I do the most inane stuff on like I'll literally be walking down the street in my neighborhood and just streaming everything, and people are and hundreds of people will watch it, or in a cab or something.
Well, see,
or
that's
even,
the whole
or
thing,
like
right? It's like, hundreds of people were watching me walk down the street. Ooh.
Yeah,
we formed a Segway gang and terrorized Petaluma on Meerkat. That was fun. 6 of us on Segways.
I think, and this is why I think this criticism of it is misplaced. I mean, because remember the criticism of Twitter at the beginning was, I don't care what people are eating for breakfast, right? It takes a while for the content that resonates to get figured out and to get out there. I think that would be the case for Meerkat and Periscope. But it's incredible. The first time I used it, I think actually was with Jason at the Watch event.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like it was just the idea that there's hundreds of people all over the world. Like it's incredible. It's really there's clearly something there. It will take time to figure it out and to kind of distill it. But no, there's clearly something very, very powerful there.
Yeah, I found it interesting. On the launch day of Periscope, that explosion happened in East Village that blew up those two buildings.
Huh?
And right away, the first thing people did was start Periscoping it, not Meerkat, Periscoping it. And you know, at BI, that's kind of, we gathered a lot of stuff from there because people immediately started filming this thing. It was kind of like when that jet crashed into the in the Hudson River. You know, people took to Twitter and someone sent a twit pic or whatever right away, and that went up and it became like this defining moment. I don't know if this is Periscope's defining moment or something, but it was very interesting that instead of photos, we started getting this live streaming video as these buildings are burning down, and that was really interesting to me.
Absolutely.
So, apparently, I didn't know this, but somebody has videotaped the Segway gang riding around Petaluma and posted it on YouTube. So even on Meerkat, it's, you never know. You never know what's going to happen. That's crazy.
I love the internet. The internet is the best.
The internet is crazy. Thank you, Pixel Punisher. Whoever you may be. Facebook apparently is not dominated by old farts like me, but in fact, teenagers are still using it. What a relief that must be to Facebook. This is an article in Recode by Kurt Wagner. I felt like Facebook was for your parents, right? Not my parents, obviously, but actually my parents are on Facebook. But Facebook was not for, you know, the teenagers. But Pew Research on Thursday released a study that found that despite a dip in total teen users from a few years back, Facebook is still far and away the most popular network among teenagers. 71% of teens, 13 to 17, use the service.
And number one is also Facebook, or number two is also Facebook.
Instagram.
It's Instagram. That's my daughter's number one is Instagram, but it's Facebook, still Facebook.
My kids use Snapchat a lot, although Abby, who's a little older, likes Instagram. But both use Facebook to keep in touch. So if there's an event, or when Abby went to L.A. or I guess New York, she went to New York a couple of weeks during spring break a couple of weeks ago, and all she did was put it on Facebook. I'm going to be in New York. And every night she went out to dinner. She saw friends. There's a real value to that. And I think that's probably why a lot of people still use Facebook, is for that kind of interaction.
Yeah, this idea that like anyone's going to only ever use one social network has been flawed from the beginning. And the reality is Facebook is so embedded that like Facebook is the Rolodex of the world, and it doesn't matter how fuddy-duddy people think it is or their parents on it. Like, everyone is going to be on it, and that's why one of the many reasons why I think the service is, strangely enough, still underrated by a lot of people in tech in particular. It's enmeshed in people's lives. Like, every country you look at, they might have different messaging services or different things, but it's always end Facebook, like the ones that are actually used. So
God, I hate Facebook so much. Don't.
You're stuck with it. Sorry.
I know. Facebook. It's another one where
I guess they have good marketing and it's objective.
No. That's not the case. In fact, Facebook, you have to be there because that's where everybody is, right?
No, exactly.
Facebook's marketing is terrible. They keep releasing apps that nobody wants.
Video.
Yeah, did you see Riff for 3 seconds? They put out apps that people use and they go, what is this? This is terrible. They can't figure it out, and yet they survive because of the network effect.
But I like their experimentation there, right? Because Instagram is a success, and I know it started on the outside, but the idea that Facebook can have other apps that have their own ecosystems, and I think that's they're so smart, and in the end, that seems to be the place that links all the people. Right. I mean, Facebook won't rest until everybody on the planet is on Facebook, right?
But I think I'm not alone when I say I hate it and I use it. I think that seems pretty universal, right? Everybody hates it.
I don't love it, but I can't use it. I don't know. I have to use it.
Do you love Facebook?
I like it. And honestly, I would be happy if Twitter was a lot more like Facebook, but with the people I follow on Twitter. Like, I think the value in Twitter is not necessarily the 140 character thing. I think I've actually read about Twitter this week. I'm going to cover all this stuff, so everyone's getting a preview. But the value in Twitter is the people that are on Twitter and the people that I'm connected with.
Right.
And quite frankly, the fact that people are still doing all these hacks, like now the pasting screenshot thing, right?
Oh my God, because they don't want 140 characters, so they paste a
you talk
paragraph.
about having a conversation,
right?
The fact that you can't have a real conversation on Twitter because it gets all these people get clogged into it in an at reply, and you end up having like these 3-word responses. It's ridiculous. I mean, and this is kind of the big concern with the company pulling in more and more like parts of the service into itself is the company has really yet to demonstrate any capability of evolving the product in a meaningful way, to be perfectly frank. I would love to have the Facebook feature set, but with Twitter people, and Twitter is miles away from that. I mean, even like Sina Weibo, the Chinese one, which was kind of big for a while, and it's really gotten destroyed by WeChat. But they've had a conversation threaded type view within a Twitter type user experience for a long time now, and it's Twitter. Like, I guess the depth of your love for a company will be reflected, or love for a product will be reflecting your frustration at it not being better.
Yeah,
that's certainly the case for me in Twitter.
Yep. All right, I want to take a break. We have lots more to talk about. I have to get a plane. I'm going to Vegas tonight for the NAB show, National Association of Broadcasters, and we're doing a panel, if you're in Vegas for NAB, called Broadcast Minds. I've done this a couple of times before with our friends from New Tech who do that TriCaster we're so dependent on. I'm going to moderate a panel. I think it's open to the public. I guess it's open to the NAB show attendees. But Scoble's going to join me. Also, and I'm really interested to talk about what's going on now in streaming and digital with gotta find the names here. Wait a minute.
Well, but you mentioned the 10-year thing, Leo. I think we went like, that's spectacular. I mean,
isn't that amazing?
Huge congratulations
Jeez,
to you. I mean,
Louise. I'm the old man of this stuff.
Well, not just that, but you talk about the idea that we're at the front edge of Periscope. We're going to see how it develops, right? We're at the front end of a watch and see how it develops. And I think, right now there's like the deluge of podcasting is the big thing. And, when the history of podcasting is written, your name's going to be on it. And that's pretty cool. So
be on my gravestone. Fourth,
I meant it as a compliment.
Thank you.
He died as he lived, doing what he loved.
On the microphone.
Being on the internet.
S222 South Hall, Monday, 5 p.m. Scoble, me. Mark de Beauvois, who's the EVP and GM for Entertainment, News, and Sports at CBS Interactive.
Wow.
They've got some really interesting digital aspirations. And from Vice Media, their head of digital strategy, Sterling Proffer, they just signed a deal with HBO to do its nightly newscast. So there's some interesting stuff happening in this space. That's what's fun about doing it is, doing it for 10 years, I've watched it change and I keep waiting for IPTV and over the top, and I keep waiting for that to happen. I think we're getting closer and closer.
Really
that's
close.
When that's when it's all gonna blow up.
This is going to be a big year for that.
You think so? This is gonna be the year?
Oh yeah. Well, a monumental step towards that vision.
HBO Now, Sling TV. We're starting to see
dam
cracks.
Doing.
Yeah.
If the dam hasn't burst, it's got cracks.
It's about to. Yeah. Hey, our show today brought to you by Stamps.com. Use Stamps.com to do your own postage thing right at your desk. No more trips to the post office. And it sounds like, I'm going to print stamps. Oh, no. It's so much more than that. Yes, you can buy and print official U.S. postage right from your computer with your printer, and no special inks or postage meter needed. But you can also, it's really more about fulfillment, about shipping. It can give your small business a more professional look. I can't tell you how often I get eBay or Etsy packages. They look like a monkey wrapped them. And they, like 100 stamps on there, and it's the address is drawn in crayon. It doesn't take anything to do it with Stamps.com. Make your packages beautiful. People will go, wow, I really trust this. This is a big company. Barcoded postage, return and delivery addresses all printed automatically on a mailing label with a Stamps.com, with your logo and the Stamps.com barcode. It makes it so easy, makes it look professional. You always have exactly the right postage because of the great digital scale you get. It's so much better. You can print directly on envelopes with your company's logo. It is professional. It is the way to do it. For shipping labels, you can put your logo on it too. You also get discounts you don't get at the post office on certified mail. You can if you're sending stuff out with confirmations, you can send an email along with it saying, here comes your package. International customs forms automatically filled out. It is just so great. No long-term lease, no hidden fees, no expensive postage meter ink. The postage rates are always kept up to date. It's just great. Stamps.com. Do everything you do at the post office and then just hand the package to your mail carrier, and that's it. You're done. There's even a button on the Stamps.com site that says, get the mail carrier out here. No wonder 500,000 small businesses, including ours, are using Stamps.com. I want you to try it. Go to Stamps.com. That microphone in the upper right-hand corner, that's for you. It says podcast listeners, click here. And make sure you type in the offer code TWIT, promo code TWIT, T-W-I-T. And you're going to get a very nice offer, a $110 bonus offer. We've talked about this before. It includes that digital scale. It includes $55 in free postage. It includes a no-risk trial of Stamps.com itself. So it's a really great deal. Worth $110. Stamps.com. Click the microphone. Enter the offer code TWIT. We mentioned that Hillary Clinton announced her run for president in 2016 on Twitter and on YouTube. She's also hired a longtime, well-respected Google executive to oversee her campaign. The CTO, Stephanie Hannon, formerly Google's Director of Product Management for Civic Innovation and Social Impact, will become the Chief Technology Officer of the Clinton campaign, according to Democrats who are in the know. She'll be the first woman to hold the title of CTO in a major presidential campaign. So digital is going to be so important in the next 18 months. It's I feel like critical to any campaign and critical to our democracy.
Yeah, but she's accepting Bitcoin like Rand Paul.
Isn't that funny? I love that.
That cracked me up.
Yeah.
I love that he's accepting Bitcoin.
Yeah, he'll take anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Russians hacked the White House. Did you see that?
What they do? Turn on the lights.
No, they
open the garage door.
They got into the State Department, then got into sensitive parts of the White House computer system, according to U.S. officials. The White House has said the breach only affected an unclassified system. However, the hackers, according to CNN, did have access to things like the non-public presidential schedule. You can make them few dates. I don't know if they had read-write access. The White House said in October it noticed suspicious activity in the network. The system has been shut down to allow for security upgrades. The FBI, Secret Service, and U.S. intelligence agencies are all involved in investigating the breach. They say it's among the most sophisticated attacks ever launched against U.S. government systems. And they think it came from Russia.
Yeah, the U.S. government track record is being on the forefront of technology outside of, I guess, the NSA collecting information.
Yeah.
You know, all the stories you hear. All the stories about Hillary Clinton's email being on her personal email account.
Now you know why.
It's a similar sort of thing, which is you start to think about other countries making great efforts to invade computer systems, and you wonder, who is trying to prevent that, and it's not. I think it's not a good story. Well, I
feel like the cyber war is going to just explode, don't you?
Yeah.
It's just taken off. It's just begun.
It's scary because you can tell when people are shooting, but a lot of this stuff happens and it's invisible.
Right.
What's funny how every attack is the most sophisticated
I know.
I've seen.
That's kind of saying, hey, it's not our fault. These guys were really good.
Right. In the same paragraph where they're saying they're shutting the whole thing down to update security, that suggests that it might not have been as secure as it could have been to start out with, which perhaps it wasn't the most sophisticated attack ever. There's a bit of a disconnect. The presidential's private schedule, I a pretty bad thing to have available. So I think it is a pretty severe breach. I question the level of sophistication relative to the level of security. I'm sure it was sophisticated, but the rest of the excerpt doesn't suggest it was as secure as it could be.
Well, of course, now the head of the National Security Agency, Admiral Michael S. Rogers, is saying, we'd like a key to all those private transactions you guys are involved in. They're going for something called key escrow. They want to require technology companies to create a digital key that could unlock any smartphone or other locked device to obtain text messages or photos, but no one agency would have the whole key. So you'd have to go to the FBI, CIA, and the NSA to get the whole key, I guess. That's the idea. Or go to the
president's private schedule, right?
Yeah.
That's the issue. You can create a key that cannot be hacked. It is, but the issue is that the key has to exist somewhere, and if they can't secure the president's private schedule, how should we expect them to secure this key? And once it's out there, I mean, everyone's going to want to get a hold of it, right? Like, maybe if it stayed on like one guy's computer in Wyoming, but yeah, it's unrealistic. And I think the fundamental issue with security is the U.S. As a government, as an institution, views, I think, security too much from an offensive perspective, how they can use it to attack other countries or get influence other countries. And probably something like Stuxnet, where they disrupted the Iranian centrifuges, it was a problem in that I think now the U.S. looks at these issues as how can they leverage it from an offensive perspective, without, I think, a deep appreciation or focus on the defensive angles of it. And you view this with this key thing, like the more you make it easier for the NSA to break in, the easier it is for it to come back the other way. Like, this is a two-way street. Like, there's no one way when it comes to security. And yeah, it's certainly very concerning, and unfortunately, I mean, it's going to have massive impacts. We just don't know what they are and in what direction.
Apparently, Apple's decision to fully encrypt the iPhone was really kind of a catalyst for some real concern among law enforcement. Now, Android now in 5.0 can do this as well. Of course, desktop operating systems have their own proprietary encryption. We don't know if there's a backdoor to that. The White House is also considering, here's another option. Why don't we have a third party hold the key?
Is that third party live in a cave somewhere and the key is on paper? And
this is the Washington Post. One possibility, for example, might have a judge direct a company to set up a mirror account so that law enforcement conducting a criminal investigation can read text messages shortly after they've been sent. For encrypted photos, the judge might order the company to back up the suspect's data to a company server when the phone is on and the data is unencrypted. And then if they'd have to get a warrant and they could go look at it. No tech company in the United States is going to agree to something like this. They'll have to be forced to do this. It's already hurting U.S. tech companies internationally.
No, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the iPhone being a catalyst for this. I mean, one wishes that the iPhone putting on this full disk compression would be an inspiration for having.
Well, it was for Google. They said, yeah, we could do that too.
Right. No. Yeah. But I mean, from
law enforcement
from a perspective. Yeah. And the reality is, no, this is hugely damaging to the U.S. tech companies abroad. Like we're only starting to see the impact now of like the Snowden revelations and that sort of thing, because it takes other countries time to build up alternatives. But in the long run, this has absolutely hurt U.S. companies.
Yeah,
it will continue to hurt U.S. companies, and the issue isn't necessarily like China per se, because the reality is China was already on a path to kind of wean itself off of U.S. technology, and they've had that project for a while. I think it accelerated it. But the issue is all these other countries in the world where now, once the Chinese finish building up their alternatives, they're going to go to them and there's going to be an alternative, and the U.S. should have no expectation of being able to hold out like we're better or any sort. Like, I mean, there was a big brouhaha about Huawei and their routers, and basically Congress banning them for all intents and purposes from the U.S. because the Chinese might spy on them. Like, that's exactly what the U.S. does.
What we want to do.
The idea that
that's our thing.
That's our thing.
Yeah, the idea that third party X, like, it's okay if we spy on you, but they're going to spy on you too. Like, no, it's such a ethnocentric, or what word for it, ridiculous, self-centered viewpoint. I'm annoyed at a lot of stuff today. Apparently, it's
also Leo. You mentioned the Washington Post. This is essentially an updated version of that editorial that they did back in October.
Yeah,
where
remember
they said
that? Yeah,
the secure golden key that the wizards at Apple and Google can invent that will change cryptography and allow all these magical things to happen.
Yeah,
and it's like they're just looking for a solution because they don't want to admit that you need to choose.
It's tough though. I mean, Obama even himself has said, "Look, I believe in privacy and encryption. I think everybody should have the right to it, but I also understand. I'm sympathetic to law enforcement that says, but then people can do bad stuff and we wouldn't know about it.
But the fact is, law enforcement, when the Miranda decision was handed down, said that they couldn't do their job if they read people their rights. And the fact is, law enforcement will find a way, but once you give that privacy away, you're never going to get it back.
I agree. We're going to take a break. Come back with our final thoughts in just a second. Steve Kovack is here from Business Insider. Great to have you. You've moved back to New York. It looks like you're in Brooklyn with the bricks.
No, I'm in the Upper East Side.
Oh, nice.
They do exposed brick up here, too.
Oh, okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
Can you get pizza up there?
Oh, pretty good pizza. A lot better than San Francisco pizza.
Oh, I know. Isn't that sad? So you're happy?
The entire West Coast is terrible.
Oh, it's terrible. You happy you went back?
Oh, I'm so happy. I miss the burritos, though. You guys have the best burritos.
We got good burritos. Yep. You got the pizza.
Oh, man.
Seems like in this great country of ours, we could solve that problem. I don't know how. Jason Snell.
One word, Chipotle.
Chipotle.
That's not a solution.
Jason Snell.
That is definitely not a solution.
McDonough is the solution. Jason Snell's here. Also from I haven't given you a plug, sixcolors.com.
Thank you.
The Incomparable podcast, too. And
yeah,
you're doing
I got a
great
couple
stuff.
tech podcasts on Relay FM people should check out.
What's Relay FM?
That's Mike Hurley and Stephen Hackett's tech podcast network. It's
that's neat.
Yeah. So I got a.
We weren't
got a
good
couple
enough for you, huh?
Well, you guys, I'm a little intimidated by this studio and all of that.
Hey,
I can do that I can do those shows in my pajamas
you can do it
from my office. Yeah.
There's something about audio. It's so much easier than the video. Well, actually, it's some good news for podcasters. We'll talk about that in just a second. Also here with us from Stratechery, and you must subscribe to his incredible newsletter and read his blog. Ben Thompson is really one of the best, as you can already tell, in the business. We're glad to have all three of you. Really fun show today. And I'm going to hear from the Apple fans, I know. Our show today brought to you by Squarespace, the easiest way to create your new website, the best hosting, never go down hosting, plus the best software gives you a gorgeous site to reflect your ethos, your style. Whether it's a professional website, a blog, an online store, Squarespace has an incredible, elegant interface, beautiful templates. It's very easy for you to create a website, and the best 24/7 customer support right from the Squarespace offices. It is easily the most beautiful, most powerful, most simple platform for your next web page. I was really proud. My daughter and her friend are creating a new site, and I told them all about the free stuff and so forth, and they without any input on my part, they chose Squarespace. Because when you do your research, you realize what you get with Squarespace, and it starts at just $8 a month. All the hosting, all the software, and you even get a free domain name when you register for a year. Live chat from Squarespace 24/7 with live chat and email support. All the Squarespace sites are responsive. There's McDonald's. That means it's like a virgin olive oil. That means that they scale to look great on any size device. E-commerce with every single template. Every website comes with a free online store. And with cover pages, you could set up a beautiful one-page online presence in minutes. I love Squarespace. Right now, if you want to move to New York or you want to think about it, Squarespace is saying they're hiring engineers who are ready for the next step in their career. They created something they call NY Commit, NYCOMMIT, an initiative that will select up to 10 engineers from all over America to experience the history, vibrancy, and diversity of New York City and the pizza. Apply today, and if you interview before April 30th, you and your spouse or partner will get to spend a complimentary weekend in New York City. That is good. To learn more, the website NYCOMMIT, New York City, NYCcommit.com. And, of course, Squarespace awaits. No credit card needed for a trial. You can start building your website today, importing your data, and really getting a sense of what it can do for you. Make sure you use the offer code TWIT to get 10% off your first purchase, but it's free to try. Squarespace.com. Use the offer code TWIT. Squarespace. Build it beautiful. Good news for our friends who were at GigaOM. Fortune has hired 6 of GigaOM's very good journalists, including, I think, our friend Matthew Ingram, Stacey Higginbotham, Barb Darrow, Katie Fehrenbacher, Jeff John Roberts, and Jonathan Vanian. There were a lot of people let go with the sudden demise of GigaOM. And, some of our favorite people, including people who've been on this show, like Matthew. So I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you, Fortune. It seems like they're going to take a run at technology with 6 new hires. Mark Pincus is back at Zynga.
And the
That
stock
was a
went
noodle
down
scratcher.
10%.
How much? 20%?
No, 10%.
10%? Wow.
On the announcement.
Why did he leave Zynga? Why did he come back?
Well, Zynga was having a lot of trouble. I think it was 2 years ago. Matrick left, or was it a year ago? I forget. Anyway, Don Matrick left the Xbox unit at Microsoft and came to kind of rescue Zynga. Their stock price was tanking. There are only so many Farmville games they can make, and he didn't do it. I mean, it's still, things were just kind of chugging along.
Matrick says he wanted to go back to Canada.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the new version of the spend more time with my family.
My family. Yeah.
I want to spend more time with Canada.
It's interesting that Pincus came back though instead of them finding some new blood, because I think I read there were some rumors Pincus wanted to start another thing or something, but apparently he wants to get another shot as CEO.
Was he still chairman?
I think he was chairman of the board. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't know. It's not a great job. I don't know what the reality is. I mean, it's a company without great prospects has to deal with public market pressures.
Yeah.
And they've lost a lot of people. They're going to continue losing people. And they just really haven't managed the transition to mobile or given any indication that that's going to change. And
they have Zynga Poker.
Yeah, which was a disaster because they updated it and it did, the new version was terrible. And so they had to re-release the old one.
When you lose $290 million, I'm sorry, $209 million in 2012, then $226 million in 2013, trouble's ahead. You can only lose so many hundreds of millions of dollars. Do you think Pincus is there forever, or is he just there until they find somebody else? Some people were saying it's so sudden that he said, yeah, I'll take over.
That's what it feels like to me. I mean, again, like Ben
time.
said, I mean, it's not the kind of company people are going to be dying to run. They're not going to be able to find some superhero to swoop in and fix things right away. And it's just telling of this industry, especially mobile games. It's like these one-hit wonders, and they IPO, they get hot for a second, and then nothing after that. They just can't recreate that magic again. And Zynga was a little different because they were a desktop game built within Facebook, piggybacking off Facebook, and they just can't adapt.
Really happy for our sponsor, lynda.com. Linda Wyman sold lynda.com to LinkedIn for $1.5 billion. Just showing tech ed is a hot category right now. It actually makes a lot of sense. LinkedIn, which is all about kind of professional networking, could use some education, professional education, and so forth. Linda founded lynda.com with her husband Bruce Heaven in 1995. It's 20 years old, and $1.5 billion.
Yeah, I remember when Linda was writing web tutorials.
Me too.
It's amazing.
We used to interview her on the screensavers all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just awesome. So proud of her. So nicely done. Just kind of wrapping it up here. You saw the robo car that drove across the country. Delphi, which is I guess an automotive accessories company, took an Audi hatchback, loaded up with autonomous stuff. What's nice is it doesn't look like an autonomous vehicle. It's got the stuff hidden behind plastic panels, and so it just looks like a normal car. They did have a driver in it. 15 states, 3,400 miles. The car did almost all the driving itself. At the only time it was really touch and go, the driver got very nervous when they went over a metal bridge, and he knew that metal was death to these autonomous vehicles. He just hovered his hands over the wheel, though, and never did have to take it. It worked. The Audi SQ5 went all the way across the country. I think we're getting closer and closer to autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, there's something to this. I think you're going to see it with AI generally. Is it's not going to. I think it's less likely to arrive as like a finished product. Like there was that like the Google car that they had, like no steering wheel or anything. Right. That may be in the future, but it's going to come piece by piece, and you see that already happening, right? You already have cars that can park themselves. You have cars that on the freeway can all but drive themselves, and there's going to be like that Tesla update. But also, I think that Mercedes has a similar system, and
so does Audi.
it will be one of those things like there's that Bill Gates quote. It's such a great quote. Like you make way less progress in 2 years than you expect, and way more in 10 than you imagine.
Right.
It's something along that lines. I think that's going to be the same thing with self-driving cars, with AI generally, and we're starting to see that play out.
And it'll come slow. I think there's an expectation that self-driving cars are going to be one day, you know, your local car dealer will have a self-driving car and you'll be like, I don't know, but it's not going to happen. It's going to creep in. We've talked about this before. It's going to be in luxury cars as an auto drive on freeways, and then there's going to be some sort of like campus taxi service on college campuses and things like that. And it's going to creep into our lives to the point where it's not going to be that big a deal when the first fully auto drive vehicle happens, because we will have all been on an auto drive vehicle in some context before, and it won't be that big a thing.
Big news for podcasters. I'm going to end with this just because we have a little celebration, I think. There was a patent troll named Personal Audio. They came to us asking, what did they ask? $1.5 million, I think, in license fees. They claimed they'd invented podcasting in 1995. We were prepared. We hired a law firm. Adam Carolla got sued. We didn't ever get sued. They said, okay. We said, no money. And they said, okay, well, we're going to sue you. We never heard back from them. But Adam Carolla got sued. A number of big networks also got sued. Discovery, I think, got sued. Grammar Girl was a lot of podcasts were approached by these guys. And we contacted a law firm, and we waited and watched for those papers. One of the things the law firm said you could do, but it's a high-risk strategy, is to go back to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and try to invalidate the original patent. They call that an inter partes motion. The risk is if you lose, that just strengthens their case. They were suing in East Texas, where patent cases are usually very strong for the patent holder. So, you know, we were prepared. I had a strategy. We were going to get all the Baptist churches in Texas that do podcasts to join us for a big picnic out in the square. The courthouse is on a square. All the law firms that pursue these patent troll lawsuits are on the square as well, in small, you know, empty offices. And I thought we'd just have a nice picnic, little barbecue, bring all the meat ministers from all the Baptist churches, meet the jury, get to know the judge. We don't have to. The EFF decided to go after them with the inter partes motion. They went to the Patent and Trademark Office. We helped kick some money in. A lot of people did. They raised money to do this. They got some pro bono work from some big lawyers. And the very good news is that the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office on April 10th invalidated the so-called podcasting patent.
Just in time for the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, thank God. Well, the first thing you do when you go to the lawyers, you say, well, should we? The really just purely logical business decision is, well, how much do they want, and how much is it going to cost to go to court? And of course, you may lose in court, so there's the risk that you spend a lot of money in court and then lose, and still have to pay the money. I'm trying to remember, but I think they asked us for $1.5 million, and I thought that was odd because we were told that the defense would be about $1 million. So I think the normal, these guys weren't that bright. I think normally what you want to do is ask for less than the cost of going to court would cost. But we were prepared to do it. Adam Carolla did, in fact, have to go to court and raised a lot of money through crowdsourcing right on. But they dropped the suit against Adam, and now I have a feeling they're kind of out of business. Although they say, well, we're going to go, we'll find some other stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not over completely. But thanks to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the Cyber Law Clinic at Harvard's Berkman Center for Internet and Society. And I'm glad the Patent and Trademark Office made the right decision.
And bottom line, these guys didn't invent podcasting.
Oh, they weren't practicing it. They were what we call the nice way to say patent troll is non-practicing entity.
Yeah.
Somebody that owns a patent but doesn't, in fact, intend to use it.
And they found a patent that looked good.
Well,
and there's prior art that proves that it's not as good as they thought.
And that we were very involved in the finding of prior art. And Kevin Marks, who did a lot of this early stuff, was very helpful with that as well. Yeah, a guy named Carl Malamud, who really is a pioneer in podcasting, had a Geek of the Week online radio show he offered for download many years before this patent. CBC and CNN also did. So, a victory. EFS said, unfortunately, our work to protect podcasting is not done. Personal Audio continues to seek patents related to podcasting. We will continue to fight for podcasters. We hope the Patent Office does not give them any more weapons to shake down small podcasters or big podcasters or any podcasters. I want to thank you for being here, Ben. I know it was very early in the morning in Taiwan, but we really appreciate it. Go to stratechery.com, STRATECHERY. Sign up for Ben's newsletter. Read his posts. He is a really insightful an analyst, and always a pleasure to talk to you.
No, and it's not, I mean, obviously I would love everyone to sign up for the newsletter, but there is a free weekly post as well, plus my podcast at exponent.fm. So if you want to, try it out first, I sign you up in the long run. Works for me.
Thank you, too, to Jason Snell. Always a pleasure to see you.
Great to be here.
And to see the MacBook. Very nice. Very pretty. 6colors.com. That's where you write.
That's a good place to be.
Anywhere else you want to plug? You got all those podcasts.
Theincomparable.com for pop culture podcasts and relay.fm for my weekly. I've got 2 weekly tech shows, Upgrade and Clockwise.
Ah, nice. Look forward to that. Thank you so much for being here, too, Steve Kovack from Business Insider. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me again. Yeah, I love being on the show.
We love having you. Anything you want to plug? It's plug time.
BusinessInsider.com. That's it. /tech, or just follow my crazy stuff on Twitter, I guess. That works too.
Good. At
Steve Kovack.
STEVEKOVACH.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. We do Twit every Sunday afternoon, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 2200 UTC. Next week, do not miss it. We are sold out for in-studio tickets. But if you want to get on the waiting list, tickets at twit.tv. And if you have been given tickets for next week and you can't make it, please let us know so we can release your tickets to somebody on the waiting list. I want to make sure I hope that as many people want to get in can. I know that won't be the case. But it's going to be a lot of fun. The good news is you can watch us live. And we'll probably start early. We'll probably start 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2100 UTC. As people come in, Kevin Rose, Patrick Norton, John C. Dvorak, David Prager, Robert Heron, all the original, Roger Chang, people from the original This Week in Tech, which began April 15th, 2005.
I was an original listener. So
were you?
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it, Ben. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We have a lot of memories to share. And I think we'll cover some tech news, but I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know. Maybe we'll all just get drunk and cry.
I'd watch that. Great.
I love you, man.
If you want to be at any other show, we do have tickets for most shows. Tickets at twit.tv. Do please email us before you come. You could, of course, watch live as well at live.twit.tv or download shows, video on demand, and audio, too, after the fact. Twit.tv, iTunes. Use the Twit apps on every platform, your podcatcher, whatever it is. Subscribe. That way you won't miss an episode. I'm Leo Laporte. Thanks for being here. Another Twit is in the can. Thank you, Twit.